You're watching ClearCut, coming to you live from New York City. I'm Michelle Makori, and recapping our top story this evening, there is growing uncertainty in Venezuela after opposition leader Juan Guaido called for a military uprising against embattled dictator Nicolas Maduro. Guaido joined a huge group of supporters on the streets of the capital in Caracas earlier today. Guaido's call to unseat Maduro brought out thousands of people. But we're told that Venezuela's military, except for a handful of troops, remains loyal to Maduro. Correspondent Marcy Gonzalez has more.
Violent clashes in the streets of Venezuela. Demonstrators who oppose Nicolas Maduro and troops loyal to the country's socialist leader facing off. Armored vehicles driving into protesters, fires erupting, as interim President Juan Guaido calls for a military uprising and what he describes as the final phase of a mission to oust Maduro.
We want to send a clear message also to the dictator, Nicolas Maduro. Your time is over. Venezuela is ready for a change.
Guaido recognized by the U.S. and more than 50 other nations as Venezuela's leader, leading the months-long effort that's now escalated, a response to the ongoing unrest, as well as the humanitarian and economic crisis there blamed on Maduro.
As difficult as it has been, I think this is something that needed to happen. It really gives us hope and motivation.
Maduro, whose 2018 re-election was deemed illegitimate, sitting down with our Tom Yamas earlier this year, denying any responsibility.
Why are people who protest you end up either dead or in jail?
Estás mintiendo, Tomás.
Maduro calling me a liar, saying I, quote, lie like President Trump.
The White House standing by Guaido, calling for a peaceful transition of power.
Our hope is that we can get a change in the regime in Caracas as soon as possible so that Venezuelans can return and help rebuild their country.
And that was Marcy Gonzalez reporting. Let's bring in our senior Washington correspondent, Dan Raviv, and Matthew Brodsky, a senior fellow with the Security Studies Group. Dan, it's good to have you with us in New York for a refreshing change, but we know you're still very tuned in to all things Washington, D.C. So tell us what kind of a response we're getting from the Trump administration to this today.
A strong warning from President Trump, Michelle. At first, I would say that he was being cautious. He said he's monitoring the situation and the United States stands with the people of Venezuela and their freedom. But then Mr. Trump wrote, if Cuban troops and militia do not immediately cease military operations, the president said, causing death and destruction to the Constitution of Venezuela, then the U.S. will impose a complete embargo on the island of Cuba. He called on all armed Cubans to immediately leave. Then this surprise, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He said Nicolas Maduro should leave and that Maduro was about to fly to Cuba when the Russians persuaded him to stay. Pompeo blaming Russia. Vice President Mike Pence, he tweeted a message to Juan Guaido and the freedom-loving people of Venezuela. Two sentences in Spanish, estamos con ustedes, we are with you, and vayan con Dios, go with God, saying America will stand with you until freedom and democracy are restored. Now, the White House National Security Advisor, John Bolton, he told reporters Mr. Trump wants a peaceful transition. Michelle?
But at the same time, Bolton was very clear to say that all options do remain on the table, and we know that that could be alluding to military options.
Yes, and he was repeating indeed what his boss, the president, said, and he warned that things could get worse and more violent, frankly, for the Venezuelan people. He said that if Guaido doesn't succeed in what he's trying right now, then the dictatorship would become more severe. Also, what might be preventing the military from shifting over, right? As you reported, so far there are no major signs that the military is quitting loyalty to Maduro and going to Juan Guaido. Well, according to John Bolton at the White House, he says it's the Cuban armed agents. He says more than 20,000 Cubans are there, and that's the real problem as of right now, according to the Trump administration.
The Trump administration certainly putting a lot of emphasis on Cuba's role in this, as well as Russia's role in this. We are getting very strong responses from Senator Marco Rubio. He's always been very vocal about this issue. He was calling on the people of Venezuela to seize the moment, to seize this opportunity today and come out on the streets, because they may not get this opportunity again. We've heard from in the past, though, that the Democrats, or some of them at least, on the left, have been reluctant to condemn Maduro, the likes of Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Is this an issue that has, for the most part, bipartisan support?
Well, to some degree. But right now, especially with how political everything is in Washington, where I usually report, Democrats in general, if they see something as a Trump administration initiative, then they don't support it. And people like Senator Bernie Sanders, they don't believe that America should intervene. By the way, another fascinating comment from that Republican senator from Florida, Marco Rubio, is that this should not be called a coup attempt by Juan Guaido, because Rubio and others who say they support freedom in Venezuela, they're pointing out that Maduro is illegitimate, that he stole the election last year. Michelle.
Thanks for bringing up that point, and that's an excellent point. Matthew Brodsky, I'd like to bring you in on there because there has been a lot of controversy over the use of the term coup to describe this uprising. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. For the first half of the day, other major networks, international networks, were reporting on this, calling it a coup, really taking the side of Maduro. And then it wasn't until there was a press conference here in Washington and a spokesperson, diplomat, for Guaido was speaking and made it clear that this is part of a constitutional process. This isn't, in fact, a coup, because the legitimate leaders are just trying to reassert control over the country. It was only after that occurred that you start seeing the chyons or the lettering that you see on the bottom of most TV screens begin to change to reflect that. That's very important, first of all, in the battle of narratives, but this is something that you see widely in different media coverage.
Well, Matt, the battle of narratives is significant. Should the U.S. decide to get even more involved in this? How do you think the U.S. should be responding? What kind of action do you think the U.S. should take, if any?
I think what has happened so far, first of all, we must understand that we are in a very critical 12 to 24-hour period of time. You don't usually get a second chance at this type of groundswell, a protest movement at this point. It seems almost past the point of no return. If it doesn't work out as it is supposed to have worked out, there just descends toward a bigger dictatorship. It seems. Sure.
All right, Matthew Brodsky, Dan Raviv, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And turning to another transition of power, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was sworn into his 4th consecutive term in office on this day. His